All right. All right, we're live. So, for everybody who's not familiar with this series, this mini series that I'm working on, and you just happen to stumble across it, there's a link below from a CIA FOIA request. Hey, how's it going? There's a request there, and if you go to that link, it'll take you to CIA.gov, and within that, there'll be a PDF that's safe to download. And within that PDF, it's going to give you information like this. If you go to page 8, section 14, just hold tight for those of you that are seasoned veterans of this series. This is for the new folks just getting on board here. Page 8, section 14, the consciousness matrix. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest and some in motion. It is in and of itself one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. According to the theories of Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram, which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we call consciousness. Now, that's just a little hook to pull you in, but ultimately the document is about the assessment of this thing called the Gateway Process from the Monroe Institute. And ultimately this process, more or less, and you can go to the previous two episodes and check them out, and it gets a bit more into it. You can also read the document yourself. It's only 29 pages. However, it is quite a journey into the unknown. It's the deepest, most richest 29 pages I've ever read in my life. I've also considered it a grimoire. So anyhow, so that's just to kind of tease and get in the new people. For those of us that have been with this for the whole time, those of us that are MEs, we're going to go jump right to patterning. And that's later on in the document. And I don't see the page exactly, but it's at the top of page where it says number 30, advanced techniques. Within advanced techniques, there's A, problem solving, and B, patterning. And that's what I'm reading off of. The technique of patterning recognizes the fact that since consciousness is the source of all reality, our thoughts have the power to influence the development of reality in time-space as it applies to us if those thoughts can be projected with adequate intensity. However, the more complicated the objective sought and the more radically it departs from our current reality, the more time the universal hologram will need to reorient our reality sphere to accommodate our desires. Monroe trainers caution against attempting to force the pace of this process because the individual could succeed in dislocating his existing reality with drastic consequences. Now, anybody who understands, kind of mainstream notions about visualization techniques can understand that in order for particular visualization techniques to become successful, they have to be realistic and attainable. And those are just basic laws of reality. And apparently those have not been violated yet that I've read. But I've read through this document, but there's more to come. So as we're getting through this, and we're starting to understand, and I'm starting to ingest more and understand this document explaining from the CIA, the Department of the Army, and the Department of the Defense that existence and the brain and the mind is nothing but a hologram. It gives really the reason why it took so long for me to get through it and understand it and digest it is because I had to come to different conclusions about what I'm reading. And one of the conclusions I came to is that it gives real teeth to one of the links like I gave in there. There's different channels out there that are kind of fringe channels, and they give you really interesting and important information. And a lot of it is intuitive if you have sort of that kind of lean, like the Camelot Project. Whether you like them or don't like them, I left in the link here about the Camelot Project, and I stopped it at around 32 minutes. I think 32:05, and then it goes on from there. And if not, then you'll know it's at 32:05. I also noted in there. But Project Camelot, it talks a lot about things like this. But I think the importance is now I'm starting to look at channels like this in a different way, especially whenever you read the document of the gateway process, which, by the way, again, is a official CIA document that says all of these things once again in the affirmative. It's not posing questions of if or whatever like you read in most mainstream science articles. The one of the astonishing things that we talked about before was the fact that they place this as if this is sort of annoying news that you got to kind of, or information that you need to get out of the way. But something I was looking at today that someone brought up to me from my Twitter feed with Truthstream Media, or excuse me, with Project Camelot, was and I think that was Petra from Battle School that did that for me, and thank you for that. Also, Vat City, who gave me the information on, let's see, Truthstream Media. Thank you to both of you guys for showing me those videos. I really appreciate that, and we'll get to both of them. But the reason why videos like this have more teeth is because of this document, this watershed document. And anyway, so the point about the Project Camelot piece is that he talks about the Mayan calendar. He talks about 2012, and that on an existing timeline, the Mayans were feverishly working towards saving this immediate or long-term reality. And when they were trying to save this long-term reality, they understood that existence as we knew it was going to end. And this harkens back to some of the things that I was just intuitively talking about in my 2012 series. I call it part intuition, part brain experiment, part, throw it all in there. It's a virtual broth and a soup and a mixture. It's a jambalaya of different ideas and things of my We Died in 2012 series. And it's very interesting what he says where it stops there. It really resonates with what I was talking about 2 years ago, literally to the month, and 4 days short of my 2-year anniversary on this of creating this channel. And I also want to bring up too about the source of the document. Buster and I, we talked about the source of the document, and then we later learned that Beyond the Veil, to my actual pleasure, also too, and I included that in the description here. To my delight, found the document months before, and they did a wonderful, like 4-hour, just powering through the whole thing. So, I have to do this in quips and bits because it's just so much, and it's just so much to take. So, they went through the document, and it was it was a tour de force of what they did. So, kudos to them. Also, I understand that in terms of the source of the document, I'm just happy it's out. I really am. I think it's important that we all share whenever we can, because the ultimate for being Emmys and the Mandela Effect community, the ultimate thing that we're trying to do is understand our existence and our reality around us. And that's why I think just that I don't care. Ultimately, I want, I know that Petra from Battle School on my Twitter feed also mentioned a Dr. Richard Miller who's discussed things. And I don't know if it's a direct was he making correlations with the document or Dr. Richard Allen Miller? I haven't had time to look if he mentioned the document specifically. So that's something other people can run down that lead. Like I said, I'm not a citizen journalist. I'm just an ME that's trying to understand exactly what I'm going through. So those are kind of some of the things that I wanted to get out of the way. It may seem a bit scattershot, but if you go through these different links that I gave you below, I think you'll kind of understand. And kind of to that with Truthstream Media, they had their own documentation, and I know that I think they're professionally trained journalists. I'm not a journalist, so I'm an IT dude. But they are professionally trained, and I noticed they had their own kinds of documents and it was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoy their big and mini documentaries, and I think that they put out a very interesting and quality product, and you can truly see that their professional training shines. But one thing that I noticed though, and this is just a minor thing, is that a lot of those documents they showed, I would like to get my hands on and read. And I don't know if maybe they're somewhere else on their website or something, and I'm just speaking in ignorance, but I didn't, just as a casual YouTuber, I didn't see them down in the description. That would be nice to have, but I suppose maybe I could look on their website and perhaps they have a place where you can go and find those, because if anybody knows, that would be great for me, because I would like to take a look at those documents that they were mentioning as well. Because those documents, though they talk about hologram reality, I don't think that they're specifically the exact documents that Buster and I have been talking about now for more than the last week, and Chick. All of us have been talking about for the last week or so. So if you know of a way to get to those particular documents, that would be really great. So one of the things that I got to towards the end of the document, once we got through patterning, and I didn't want to skip over that part of patterning. Well, another thing, just to circle back to that real quick, why patterning is important to remember is that if you do decide to go through the gateway process and on your own, or you decide to go to the Monroe Institute, this can't be. I mean, this is like a universal law that I knew about anyway, whether it's reading through occult or new age, that you can't, your desires have to be realistic, and the meaning that you want to derive from those things, they have to be sort of within range. And it sounds almost as if there could be within the hologram that is this reality, there could be a strain that you could put on sort of the resources that it takes to keep the vibrational frequencies in order. Because if existence is a hologram and it's sort of these vibrating, oscillating, frequencies, then there has to be a certain kind of a symmetry that has to be maintained, and there has to be this harmony that has to be maintained. And harmony and balance is central to everything, whether it's spiritual, technical, anything. And there has to be that kind of balance. And you are usually the one that suffers. Um, you will be the one that has to pay, whether it's in karma or whatever you want to call it. You'll be the one that pays if you force your will too hard, and you take your immediate area, or even worse, if it goes farther and you force things out of balance. So that's something that's very important to keep in mind. And all belief systems have a way in which that you can sort of understand when you've reached those boundaries. And that's also too why it's important to not be a reductive materialist, because that really leaves you the most vulnerable. Because I understand there's a lot of Abrahamic religions that are somewhat, how do I put this? They want to be the dominant paradigm in understanding of the spiritual world, or the world that we cannot see. However, there's a lot of other belief systems that will help explain and give fulfillment to your life, I think, as well, particularly for people who may not be in a particular background. They may be different in the background. They may have a different upbringing. They may be in a different part of the world, and certainly it would help if people from different religions, particularly the Abrahamic religions, were to recognize that. That would be somewhat helpful. But moving along from that, what I wanted to get to really today was the conclusion. And the conclusion of this whole thing, and this won't be the conclusion of this series. What the conclusion of the document, because I've tried to go through the document and highlight points that matter to me, and highlight points. But what we'll probably end up doing with the series, if I keep it going from here, although a 3 is a nice number to end on, but I may keep it going in some kind of fashion or form. Wanted to first get it out of the way, what they're saying, and then later on, perhaps even just with the DNA of the channel, because I noticed since reading this document, I'll go back and re-look at other videos. I'll pull down books I read years ago, like the Grail Tradition. I'll pull down other books, that I'm reading, from other people. And it's really amazing that I'm a bit ashamed of myself that I needed this kind of teeth. I needed this kind. I'm still in that mind frame of obeying. But because the CIA said it, I'm going to openly admit to you, even though I disappoint myself and I try to preach, though obviously I don't practice that I don't need permission to know these things that are a fact. But I will admit now that I have this in my hands, it's almost as if it was a permission slip. And you can judge me for that, and that's fine. I understand if you will, but there's just something about this that now that I have it, and it's part of my life now. I'm able to go back and read the books and look at those videos and understand and see which ones had real teeth and which ones didn't. And you would be surprised that a lot of people that are intuitive, they had that, they had that bravado. You know what I mean? They had that spiritual baritone, that deepness to them, to their own spiritual voice that it had to call out. And it's kind of funny I brought up that a voice, it's a sound. And that's what this hologram talks about, that we're all moving in. But I do think it is interesting about those holograms and those sounds. And my early understandings of all of this thing with the Mandela effect and why I was kind of dragged into this and this strange and odd, bizarre understanding of this reality and this existence is because I began to understand that time wasn't what I thought it was. Reality wasn't what I thought it was. And once the Mandela effect hit me, it did indeed change my life. And I understood that the past was alive and the past was, I almost felt as if it was upset we were here. And I almost felt as if we were here with it and we were sharing space with the past. And if you go over to that Project Camelot and it's at 3205, he talks about, he sort of addresses that some of us in the future, which is actually now, um, perhaps some of us that are MEs, it goes back to my original 2012 series, we were dislodged from a particular timeline for whatever reason. Whatever reason you need that we were dislodged from a particular timeline, and we've landed somewhere else. And yet this place seems very artificial to a lot of us. And perhaps, as this CIA document says, we are living in this particular hologram. And that opens up the door for all paranormal things. And just it's so massive that it's going to take a year or more to really understand and comprehend what we're talking about. And I invite anyone, even outside of the ME community, to read the document. I think this will help paranormal people understand things better. I think UFO people will understand things better. I think just straight up hardcore journalists that are conspiracy minded that are alternative media will understand this better. I think all walks of life are going to be enriched, will understand, because you don't understand what you're talking about or reporting on unless you understand the foundational premise from which you spring forth from into this existence. And we need documents like this in order to understand our place in this existence. And just the fact that this document almost works seamlessly with almost every belief system that I'm aware of indeed adds to those teeth and in fact sharpens them to the point of fangs. And I do believe that we are a lost people, MEs, and we are strangers in a strange land. And perhaps we are, in a lot of ways, we're taking up, if you were to look at it like it's like time as a server, like your computer, only it's like a server, we're taking up their space. The past has its own, you know, and in the conclusion, you're going to see this. The past has, and I've always said this, it's alive, it's moving, it's aware of itself, just like we're aware we're in the present. The past is aware of itself, and we're sort of renters. We're renting space in the past, and I think that too is why a lot in this particular present that we're living in, a lot of things are being unveiled. The veil is falling, and why the world is changing so rapidly, and why in current events things seem so things people got away with. We knew we were living, for the most part, a lie. Most of our lives, and most of us, for whatever reasons we have in our particular life. And we knew the reality around us was, for the most part, the way in which it was constructed, for the most part, was a lie. And I think now the reason why so many things are becoming so apparent that no one can hold back it anymore. The horses have been set free, so to speak, or the horses out of the barn, or whatever, whatever sort of saying I can butcher. But I think it's because we are in a space that we're not supposed to be in, perhaps. And and part of the rent that we have to pay is we sort of have to pay somewhat, we have to play by their rules. And in order to do that, certain concepts and perhaps certain um, perhaps certain deceptions have to be sacrificed. I don't know. It's just a feeling I'm getting, and I don't want to get too specific because this is not that kind of channel where I do like that kind of thing. I think you all know where the water I'm treading on. It's not usually water I like to tread on, but it's a point I want to make about the space we're sharing. It's not natural, so there has to be trade-offs. So if the world seems distorted to you right now, and you are becoming upset by it and you're not understanding it, perhaps one of the reason is that we are in this hologram, and we're not in our normal hologram. We're in this weird one. So and because of that, we're paying rent. And the landlord probably isn't very fond of us being here, perhaps. Anyhow, the conclusion. One of the most important parts of this document is summed up within just a few sentences. And I think anybody that's just joining now, and please, everybody, I see there's 58 watching, and thank you so much for dropping everything and just, hanging out with me right now. Can you guys give me all a thumbs up, please? Please help me out. I've been demonetized, and I want to make sure that I'm not knocked off this platform. So if I could get a lot of thumbs up, I would appreciate it. And if people in the never-ending present, if they're listening to this, please give me a thumbs up. Anyhow, before I go, I just want to talk about the conclusion here. So the conclusion is all about targeting. It's about targeting an individual, and because it's the CIA and DoD, I would imagine it's for law enforcement purposes or purposes of spycraft, purposes of any kind of enforcement of whatever. The stuff the government does. They enforce like laws, and they also enforce policy that is both public and secret. And that's the way it is, right? So anyway, it says here, use a multi-focus approach to solve the problem of distortion in terrestrial information gathering tips. This approach involves the use of 3 individuals in the out-of-body state. Now notice it's 3 individuals. So you have a forward individual, and then you have 2 side individuals, and you're kind of going at it from, you literally are a clandestine, ethereal astral body military force. So it's almost truly like a space force, and you're in formation, and you're going in for the target. And I see this numbers are creeping up. This is the CIA.gov document. And anyway, so use multi-focus approach to solve problem of distortion in terrestrial information gathering trips. This approach involves the use of 3 individuals in the out-of-body state, one viewing the target object here in time-space. Get ready for this. One viewing it at focus 15 as it slips into the immediate past, and one viewing it at focus 21 as it slips into the immediate future. Debrief all 3 and compare data gathered from the 3 points of view. If care is taken to ensure that the 3 all go out of body together in the same environment, their conscious energy systems should resonate in sympathetic oscillation. They can tune into the same target on different planes, and they have imperance dimensions with greater effectiveness. So envision, these jumpers, and they're jumping out of a plane. One is jumping out, his parachute opens in the past. One is jumping out, his parachute opens in the present, one jumps out, the parachute opens in the immediate future, and you're landing over top of your target. And then they have other tips here, and my favorite is tip J. You're gonna love this one. Be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporeal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded. So we obviously are talking about, I don't know what kind of intelligent life forms that they're talking about, but they didn't say human beings. So obviously we're talking about, well, I guess that's something that you can kind of derive for yourself, because if you read the documents, one of the many threads that flow through this document that are paradigm changing for anyone, like I said, that's into any kind of fringe culture, and really anybody at all. If you really truly want to understand yourself better, your reality better, and why deja vu happens, why coincidences happen, you don't have to be deep in ME for this document to give further meaning to your life. Um, you know, I love it. I just love this stuff. So that's really all I have for now. This was just a quick one. And I also just wanted to touch upon Beyond the Veil. I wanted to touch upon Truthstream Media, and I wanted to thank everybody who brought that to my attention. And it was interesting that going back and forth on Twitter now, that this momentum is achieved, and that this momentum, you realize momentum is almost like a song, how a song starts out, right? Song is sound, right? It's frequencies, right? And so is this. So is this existence. That's why music is so powerful for us. But the song starts up and gets moving, and when it really gets rocking, right? And you're really, whatever kind of music you're into, and you are just completely immersed in the sound. That's what I think we're in right now with this particular thing. And I've got the momentum with this, and people are sending me all kinds of incredibly powerful information on this, and that's because of the oscillating frequencies that are being emitted by me within my particular hologram. Because let me find that quote real quick, and that'll be a nice parting shot. For everybody who's new and everyone who is actually seasoned, not only with the Mandela effect, but indeed with this particular series. What does it say about the brain? The brain isn't... No. It says the brain isn't perceiving reality. Reality is basically creating, or the consciousness is basically creating the construct of what we would call a human brain. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you. The problem is I highlighted too much. I started highlighting just really small things. Oh, here we go. I ended up highlighting too much. I actually could probably have to reprint out this thing because I've done so much scribbling and highlighting. So I'm going to leave you with this. As psychologist Keith Floyd puts it, contrary to what everyone else knows is so, it may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but rather consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain. Okay, everybody, take it easy, and I will talk to you soon. 2 Eastern with the Lost and Found bin. Chick and I obviously will go over this again. Thank you very much.